Hello everyone, my name is Sascha Bailey. For the last 8 years I've been working with young emerging artists and established artists as a curator and a manager. My technique is very hands-on and I work with about 40 artists, 10 of which who I work with very closely to help them improve their craft. I've curated shows in both London and Tokyo and worked with artists from both countries. My talk today is going to be about the project I've been working on for the last year, which is the Blockchain Art Exchange, which aims to solve a lot of the issues that digital artists that I've worked with have had, as well as help to provide new sector autonomy and grant artists the ability to move between different art-based industries with ease. So first of all, what is a crypto collectible? Well, in the world we've got essentially two types of assets. We've got fungible, we've got non-fungible. Gold, money, all of those sort of things are fungible because you have one bar of 20 gram gold and you can exchange it for another bar of 20 gram gold. You have one US dollar, it's exactly equal to another US dollar. Then non-fungible items include things like classic cars, deeds to houses, and other things like that. Now, we've also got intangible fungible assets, which would include things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, air miles even, and then intangible non-fungible assets, which include things like copyright and CryptoKitties. Now, art's always been, well, art for the last at least 100 years has been on the fence between tangible and intangible. We have performance art, we have video art, we have things like that that have never really been packaged in a compelling way and could never be packaged in a compelling way for sale until blockchain came along. So before we jump into what the excitement in the industry is, what all of this, and how we're tackling these problems, let's have a quick look at how crypto art actually works. So we've got essentially four main parts. We've got the blockchain, which is Ethereum in our case, but this works as a registry. This gives us the information on who owns what, why they own it, when they bought it, what they bought it for, and provides provenance for the digital space. Then we have a server, which is where we host the large image files. Now, a lot of people use the IPFS, but in reality it could be any server. The end goal is to move to a distributed service like the IPFS, but for the time being, we simply use AWS as our main source. Then you have Web3 browsers, which is actually the person's way of interacting with our artwork and interacting with dApps in general. These include things like MetaMask, Trust Wallet. They just basically are your gateway to working with our smart contract. Then finally, we have something that people outside the industry may not know about, which is the token URI. And a token URI is essentially a URL which is input into into non-fungible tokens, which when called returns a JSON blob of information, which includes the URL of the image, the description of the artwork, the name, and any other relevant attributes that you want to include. Now, this predominantly is the main way that non-fungible items and collectibles artwork is displayed on third-party exchanges, and also on a few of the main exchanges themselves. So, all that being said, what does blockchain actually solve for artists right now? What are the problems which it solves? So first of all, it brings down the marginal cost. Storage, shipping, and insurance on artwork are absolutely massive. Printing costs are huge. These things, for digital artists, they no longer require. It also invites a new demographic to get involved in the fact that no longer is it art critics or is it gallerists who will decide what art's seen. Anyone can access any art immediately and directly. Now, this has been possible for a while with other platforms, but a real compelling way of buying it hasn't existed until now. Then you've got the means of exchange. Now, this is mainly focusing on the way that, say, video artists work. So with video art, it's not so much the problem that you can't sell it the first time, it's the problem that you have with resale. Because you are basically selling someone, in most cases, a disc or a USB stick along with an agreement that states that this person will not copy this piece of data. The problem with this is, of course, when you go to resell it, someone isn't necessarily going to trust that you haven't done that. The way that most video artists get away around with this today is creating custom hardware, which obviously is far too expensive for a young budding artist to even consider. We also have the ability to create interesting royalty fee structures, from the simplest to the more complex, from just simply paying the artists 10% each time to maybe a complex token economy like something that the blockchain art exchange has. And then finally, we have the ability to log global IP, which is something which blockchain just provides. Of course, it's a registry. Once you register your artwork on there, providing you haven't committed any copyright infringements, your IP will be logged for all time. So as I said, the main people who benefit from this are all sorts of digital-based artists, so 3D designers, graphic designers, video artists, and concept artists for video games now have an outlet where they can sell unique versions of their work. And you might say, well, why we have, we could always print stuff and sell things in that format. But that's why this next slide, I think, is something worth looking at and is quite interesting. So when you print an artwork, you generally print it in a color spectrum called CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow. And this allows, this color spectrum is actually a lot smaller than the color spectrum of RGB, which is, again, a lot smaller than the visible color spectrum. But with RGB colors, we get further vibrancy, we get pinker pinks, bluer blues, and greener greens. And this allows artists to create far more vibrant works that can be displayed on a screen than anything could ever be printed. So anytime a digital artist is printing their work, they're sacrificing vibrancy for the medium that they're creating it in. It doesn't have the outlet in the medium that it is. So very exciting over the last few years, new ways to interact with digital art have been propping up. So we've got several that we're going to go through now, which are just some of the technologies that are being born in tandem with the blockchain community's NFT art market. So we've got AR, which is coming at some point, but every time we see demonstrations of AR, art takes a huge focus. It's going to play a huge role in what becomes our space and our 3D space in the future. Again, continuing with this theme, we have projects like Cryptovoxels, which allows people to own spaces of digital land, and inside that digital land, put their artworks that they've bought in a digital space to display. Now this expands to the Decentraland, but these projects really give us an inkling into what the future of social media and the future of human interaction online will be. Then we have, of course, art screen TVs, which Samsung has been developing, and they truly have a fantastic display quality, down to whether you want them to look realistic or you want to benefit from the additional colours provided by the RGB spectrum. Then, of course, there's third-party exchanges. Now, the reason that these are important is because one of the aspects of art or non-fungible tokens in the real world, non-fungible items in the real world, is that you can take your item after buying it from one location and sell it at another one. The market has some liquidity in the aspect that you can buy and sell, and you have the choice of where you buy and sell. The third-party exchanges like OpenSea give this market that third-party need. They give the ability to take away the artwork and sell it somewhere else in a compelling way where you're not just transferring it between wallets. Although this is possible too. So art for the new generation. Now this is an artist called Leonardo Vincent, and this is a work created as a conceptualization of a moment in recent internet history. The YouTube content creator PewDiePie had, you may have heard of a race between him and a company called T-Series. At the moment that he looked like he was about to lose this race to 100 million subscribers, Elon Musk came onto his podcast and came onto his show and did a meme review. An artist then saw this and created his own representation of that moment in internet history. Now, what's interesting about this is an artist who, this is maybe something that may not be important to art critics now, or may not even be of interest, but who's to say what in the future and what moments of the future will be desirable for this new market. Now, of course, this video was viewed on his channel, which has more views on an average night than BBC and ITV combined. So, more people saw this artwork than a lot of artworks that would go out there. More people have a vested interest in what makes this artwork interesting than a lot of other artworks out there. So this all comes into what the blockchain can do for artists. It grants better artist autonomy. It allows artists access to a $700 billion market. And what I mean by this is if you have a platform where things can easily be licensed or bought, you can have a platform where, for instance, a clothing designer designs a range of clothing that they intend to be clothing drawings, which they intend to be put onto a normal person or to be made into real life clothing. But then a video game industry knows that this platform is a place where they can find creativity of all kinds. So they come to the platform looking for some interesting clothes to put into their game. They find this clothing designer's clothes and they license them to be used in their game. This produces autonomy between these two industries that up till now had very little. There's no central place where you can go to look for creative design ideas of all kinds easily. There's a few interesting things on this slide to go through. One of the main interesting things is to look at actually how small these industries are together individually, but as one they make up something quite significant, which is, in my opinion, all very art-based and all has artists and creatives who realistically could move between industries, but wouldn't. Video game concept artists, for example, spend most of their lives getting a paycheck because it's more secure, but very rarely have the opportunity to privately sell their work. Fine artists have the opposite problem. They have a lot of opportunity to sell their work privately, but they make income on a very sporadic basis. If we could collapse the different industries and allow them to move freely between them, we could have fine artists getting deals for that concept artists would normally get, and you could have concept artists selling artworks in the way that fine artists usually would, giving artists better access to this entire market. So that takes me down to blockchain art and games, and this is actually one of the artists who we've been working with, is Zarlin Art. Now, she's traditionally a concept artist, she's trained as a concept artist, but given the opportunity to create fine art, you can see the level of skill and detail that goes into learning how to do this form of artwork. And on a skill and conceptual basis, there's no worse or better than any fine artist out there. In fact, the skill level required to pass a degree in concept art is far greater than that required to do in fine art, simply because of the subjective nature of fine art itself. So finally we're on to us, and what makes us, the B.A.E, different. So first of all, we treat everything like an archive. We make sure that we uphold the highest quality standards when uploading the work. We went into it earlier how the IPFS wouldn't be large enough to hold a lot of the files with the latency that we require. So we work with better quality the file, the better. And we'll get into exactly how that process works as we go along. We have an algorithm which actually prices the artwork. At launch, we were going to make this something which artists had to adhere to, but as we went along, we decided that it should be an optional case instead. And of course, we have our own royalty fee structure, which in our case is quite interesting. We use, instead of just paying artists a royalty, it's each time an artist sells an artwork on our platform, they receive a small amount of a small royalty, and they're added to a pot. We'll go through the exact process as we go along, I think. Then finally, we've got unique token economy. So we have our own ERC20 token, but we want to use it in a way that's compelling, perhaps to slowly make, over time, the B.A.E itself into a DOA completely. I'll only be going through a few of these processes today because I don't have time to go over absolutely everything. So, this is the B.A.E process. Now, a lot of this we've gone through already, so I won't be going over it again. I'm just very quickly showing you what I'm going to be kind of talking about and what it's focused on what the next sections will be focused on. So there's two ways that you can go with after you've logged it onto the Ether blockchain. You can sell the artwork or you can license it. I'm just going to be talking about licensing, and specifically I'm next going to be talking about how our digital standard works and some of the problems we faced when getting our digital standard onto, when researching how to create the digital standard and going forward with that. So this is the GIA Diamond Standard. The GIA Diamond Standard is a way of grading diamonds which is universally accepted on certain qualities which they have. And all non-fungible real-world, all non-fungible tangible items have attributes like this. For classic cars, you have condition reports. For artwork, you have condition reports and provenance reports. This is something that is always part of a non-fungible item. But the diamond standard in general is something that was an inspiration because of the complexity and the attributes included, I thought were relevant to how a digital file might work. So this is our grading and pricing process. Again, it's really just a grading process. The pricing became something that we wanted to do, but as we grew further, it decided to make it more of an optional extra. So what the main problem that we have with uploading physical artworks to the blockchain is if you send me an image from the other side of the world and I've never seen the artwork, how do I know that it is the correct color? And we spent a lot of time trying to find a group of printers that could all print off the exact same shade of grey or shade of red, but that was to no avail. So instead, what we ended up deciding on is using something called a grey card, which is usually used to calibrate cameras to make sure that their color's correct, but we wanted to use it for a point of reference. So in our grading process, someone uploads an image, 2 images, which need to be taken roughly at the same time, of the same picture, one with a grey card, one without. Then we visually inspect and make sure that the 2 images are similar, and the grey card itself is the colour that we know the grey card should be. When we found that out, we can give it a grade on the colour metrics. Now, as I said, all of this is done manually at the moment, but as we build up a database, we will be able to automate the process further. So we receive an A in colour metrics. Then we check the second attribute. Second attribute is something called DPI, which is dots per inch, but really should be referred to as pixels per inch. We check this relative to the artwork's original size. So in this case, it's 600, which is very high, so we'll give it an A in DPI. And finally, we have a look at the file type. And the file type is quite important in archiving. For instance, if you have a JPEG, every time you resave that JPEG, you lose a small amount of quality. So for a long-term archive, you want something that's lossless and potentially uncompressed. So a TIFF or a bitmap are both great options for archiving, so hence why they're some of the best files that we use. Now there's also an aspect on here called number of prints, which isn't something I'll be talking about much today, if at all. It basically works in a reverse order way of printing, but again. So this is our token economy and sales process. So what happens is standard thing, artwork uploads to the blockchain, it's made into a tradable token. Then on the first sale, the artist is rewarded with some B.A.E tokens, as well of course the money from the sale. But at the same time, all of the other artists who have sold on the platform at some point are also rewarded with a very small amount of that artist's sale. Then that person resells the artwork. They are rewarded obviously with the ether from the sale, but they also receive a small amount of B.A.E tokens and become a B.A.E token holder. So the only way to become a B.A.E token holder is to sell art on the platform. Other than that, you can't buy it, and this is to prevent people from hoarding the tokens. This is to prevent people from buying in, because that's not really what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about rewarding artists for participating in our new ecosystem. So finally, I'm going to show, just before we get to the end, just a kind of Venn chart of how many other projects there actually are in this space, and how many, I think I got them all here. If I missed any, please let me know in the questions afterwards. But there's really 3 main sectors that people are trying to achieve. There's provenance, digital art, and fractionalization. And now a lot of us started out in one of these circles and slowly moved towards another. The B.A.E's goal has always been to provide a solution for digital art which involves fractionalization options. Provenance, of course, is a big part of it, but not really focused on the physical side too much. So thank you so much for listening. Coming up on the board now is a QR code which takes you directly to our online shop, so you can go and buy some of the amazing art that you may have seen throughout this presentation. My name is Sascha B.A.E. Please check out the blockchainartexchange.com, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
No.